So, when would you say Star Wars started to go downhill? Some might say the prequels, but those morons are wrong. Some would even dare to say that, oh, it was with it was with Disney that Star Wars started going downhill, where we got the rehash known as The Rehash Awakens, where we got the terrible Last Jedi, or how we got an oversaturated market of original trilogy content. And since the sequel trilogy is nothing but rehash OT, well, let's just say we have had way too much original trilogy aesthetic, pandering to the OT elitists and fanboys. But as those in the EU community know, the downfall wasn't with the prequels. Far from it. The prequels is what gave us some of the best EU content we've seen, well, in a long time. It was always good, but we just got a real explosion of great EU, such as the Clone Wars Multimedia Project. Funny how I bring that up. No. The real turn of the worst was with TCW, the series from 2008 to 2014. The cartoon that many claim to be, why, the best thing we've gotten out of Star Wars since the original trilogy. Why, it makes the prequels better. No, it makes the prequels bearable. You can't step 2 feet without hearing somebody praise this series. And if you had asked me, I want to say part 1 of Captain Fordo's videos on why TCW doesn't fit in the EU, or Legends, and even a bit after, I would have agreed. Why? Well, ever since I was a kid, I loved this show. As I mentioned before on this channel, I grew up with this series. But it's not just kids who loved this show. Many adults. Go on YouTube, look up any, honestly, new canon fan, specifically, or better yet, a casual fan, and they will praise this series. Call it one of the greatest parts of Star Wars. But before I continue, I would like to give my definitions of what a hardcore and casual fan are, just so you guys know moving forward whenever I use the terms. In my opinion, a casual fan is someone who really only cares about having the baseline knowledge. In the case of Star Wars, this would just be watching the films, and that's it. They don't care about anything else. They just watch the films as they are. While a hardcore fan is someone who actively wants to learn more. And this could either be behind the scenes stuff or getting into the supplemental material. And they don't even have to have an encyclopedic knowledge of everything. They just want to learn more. Learn as much as they can, and that's what makes them happy to be a fan. I, of course, fall under the hardcore camp, as you can no doubt tell by the collection. But it's both in terms of the supplemental material, and the behind-the-scenes stuff. I bring this up because something I definitely noticed is there are a lot, and I do mean a lot, of casual fans of the films who adore this series. People who didn't get into the EU, so the only Star Wars knowledge they have are the films. People like Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, that Star Wars girl. I would say pretty much anybody from the Fandom Menace, if you could really call them Star Wars fans. But you do have those outliers. Thor Skywalker, for instance, is someone I would call a hardcore fan in the behind-the-scenes camp of things. Until the new canon, of course. He loves TCW and he loves the new canon just because Lucasfilm says it's canon. Don't get me wrong, I love his channel. His content is amazing. He's one of the calmest and most well-collected Star Wars fans. He never insults anybody, and he's just an awesome guy to watch. But his stance on the EU is aggravating, but that's besides the point. He's the outlier, the exception to the rule of the casual fan loving TCW. And of course, it can be said that the sheer popularity of TCW from the casual fans is one of the reasons why Disney made this the only part of the EU, I use part in quotation marks by the way, and made it canon, or put it in their new canon. And one could have the conspiracy theory that the only way they would get Filoni to get on board their new canon is if they made TCW one of the building blocks, the foundation of the new canon. But hey, that's just a fun little thing to think about. So already, you have a built-in audience from TCW, and now you have a new canon that'll pretty much connect back to it. We'll get characters, plots, etc. Continuations of all kind. I mean, hey, near the start of the new canon, we got Rebels. Season 2 was practically a sequel. We got Rogue One, where we got Saw Gerrera. So all in all, if you love TCW, then there was a fairly good chance that you would more so get into the new canon. At least that's what I think. But with all that said, what about me? I've mentioned before that I grew up with this series, but now I'm delving deeper into the EU, something I didn't do when I was watching this series, when I was a fan of this series. So sit back and relax and let me rewind the clock for you back to either 2008 or 07. I was at Disney World. Downtown Disney, as the place used to be before it got a dumb name. But anyways, I was in their Lego store, of course, and I always loved looking at the Lego Star Wars sets, so I walked over to their Star Wars section, and lo and behold, I saw this Lego Anakin Starfighter. Like, okay, that's cool. But something that caught my attention, I can't remember if it had the TCW logo on it or not, but one of the things that caught my eyes was that the Anakin minifigure looked different. I mean, completely different from the other Anakin minifigures. And one of the interesting parts of that was, I thought it looked like, I thought they were using designs or got inspiration from the Clone Wars micro series from '03. Funny, I know. Now cut to several months later, and we get confirmation, or at the very least as a kid, I finally hear about a Star Wars animated movie called The Clone Wars. And as a kid who adored the films, oh my god, this was amazing. I mean, we were getting a new Star Wars film, and I was going to be able to see it in theaters. This must have happened for pretty much every kid who loves Star Wars, but I was so excited to see this film. I don't remember if I heard about a TV series, but either way, I was overly excited for this film. So on the day I finally saw it, was arguably one of the purest and funnest movie-going experiences I've ever done. I was 7 years old at the time, and I was just waiting eagerly for the day to come to an end so I can go watch it. My dad and I picked up my best friend. We went to McDonald's. We got and we got a couple of the Happy Meal toys they had at the time, which were the bobbleheads. I think I got the Yoda bobblehead, and my best friend definitely got the Captain Rex bobblehead because he was a huge fan of the Clone Troopers and Stormtroopers at the time. So we got to the theater, and it was completely empty. But we didn't think anything of it. We were just two massive Star Wars fans in a theater alone, with my dad, of course. So we were running around, having the time of our lives, eagerly awaiting to see a Star Wars film on the big screen. And that's all I can remember. I don't remember how I felt about the movie, but from what I can recall, I loved it. I didn't think Ahsoka was annoying. I thought she was great. I thought this really expanded upon the films. And I can't stress this enough, my knowledge of the EU was limited. Save for a few video games, the Clone Wars micro series, up until this point. So I was able to watch this series with the mindset that this wasn't contradicting anything. This was actually really expanding upon the films in a way that I'd never seen before. Now, when Season 1 came out, I didn't watch it regularly. I caught episodes that I could, but I did eventually see it all when it was released on DVD. And what was really nice about the DVD was that it came with an art book. And I'm a sucker for seeing concept art. It wasn't until Season 2 where I started to watch it regularly. And this is going to be another reason why the series is why I hold the series in a special place in my heart. I wasn't the only one who watched this series. My dad watched it with me. And he's the guy who got me into Star Wars. He's the one who owned the DVDs of the films. And those films, as I mentioned before, have been in my life for as long as I can remember. So I was watching this series with the guy who got me into Star Wars. I was seeing new Star Wars content weekly with my dad. And of course, now, he's a huge comic book fan, so him and I have plenty of stuff to talk about when it comes to various fandoms. Star Wars, yeah, he's into the films, he'll watch the cartoons, but he's not really he's a casual fan, let's just say, but still, being able to experience this with him, seeing the universe we both love expand, etc., etc., best time of my life. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it was great. And there are key moments that I remember from watching this series. One, when Mother Talzin sends Savage Opress on a mission to find his brother, and of course the crystal ball, let's call it, is cracked, so we don't get a clear image, but I could tell that, oh my god, it's Darth Maul. My dad was like, no, it can't be, and I'm like, oh, it has to be. Speaking of Savage Opress, when we first went to Dathomir and we saw the Zabraks, of course, I immediately thought of, oh my god, it's Darth Maul's people. Awesome. And let's see. Oh, yeah, the Season 5 finale. Oh, man. By the time we got that final shot of Ahsoka walking away, that was powerful for both my dad and I. I mean, when the series started, I had assumed that Ahsoka was gonna die. As did, I would say, everybody else. But at the time, watching that, it felt worse than killing her off. She walked away from the Order, walked away from Anakin. Ooh. And man, this series, at the time, I called one of the best cartoons of all time. We got to see just how brutal war could be. Not only that, the Clone Trooper episodes, I mean, honestly, I'm still gonna claim this, that the Clone Trooper episodes are the best episodes of this series. I mean, I prefer how the clones were portrayed in the EU as obedient soldiers. I really don't like the microchip angle that the Lost Missions gave us, but ironically, given that this is Star Wars and I was a kid, my favorite episodes were the clones. Now, I loved it all. There wasn't a single episode that I called bad. I loved it all. Was I being a dumb child? Well, I will say sometimes children don't know any better, but I recall a quote from episode 2, which has become one of my favorite movie quotes of all time. You probably know where I'm going with this, but Yoda says, "Truly wonderful the mind of a child is." I was going to use this quote in a possible prequel defense video, but I'll just say it here, because why not? Children can just look at things in a more pure sense. In some cases, free of bias. Or at least as close to free as they can possibly get. Being able to watch something and enjoy it as it is. And that's what I did with TCW. But then, after Season 5, we got the Lost Missions. Okay, guys, I'm gonna end part 1 for now since the video will cut away, so see you in a few seconds.